Hello and welcome everybody to today's webinar, Visual Production Scheduling versus Visual Advanced Production Scheduling. My name is Martin and I'm the host for today's webinar. I'm CEO and co-owner of NETRONIC Software, and I will guide you through the next, let's say, 60 minutes. We will talk about visual scheduling, visual production scheduling, visual advanced production scheduling. And before I start with the content, just a few housekeeping details. You all on mute, like you are familiar with from webinars. And if you have a question, then please post this in the GoToWebinar chat pane. And when I'm on the slides, then I will typically answer it right away. When I'm doing demos, and I will do 2 demos in this webinar, then I may not notice your question directly, then I will answer it after the demo, and then there will be a time at the end of the webinar where I will also answer all those questions that come then or are left over. We record. Let me check if I'm recording the webinar. We are recording the webinar, so we will make this available on our website, and maybe beginning of next week, because the colleague who is doing so enjoys vacation right now. And we will also upload this on our YouTube channel. This is something that we will do most likely tomorrow. So then, if you like the content, please share it afterwards with your friends and colleagues or with your customers so that they can also have a look. As I said, it will be available on YouTube maybe tomorrow, and then on our website in the section recorded webinars beginning of next week. And with this, let's get started. So the webinar has 2 elements. Like the first 10 minutes will be on PowerPoint slides, because I would like to spend a few minutes and thoughts on actually the question on what is visual scheduling, because I would like to get this kind of clarified before we then can look at 2 ways how to achieve visual scheduling, especially for Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central. And this will be the second part of the webinar. The second part of the webinar will consist of 2 demos. One where we look at how to achieve visual production scheduling, and then how to achieve on top of this, or in addition to this, or alternatively to this, visual advanced production scheduling. And I will also let you know what we believe are the main differences between pure visual production scheduling and visual advanced production scheduling. And with this, let's start with a few semantics, because as you see, I already used the phrase visual scheduling quite a lot of times, and we actually use it 2 times in the title of the webinar. So I think it justifies that I just spent a very few words on this, and this will be just a couple of minutes before then the biggest part of the webinar will be the demo part. So what is visual scheduling? And before we talk about what visual scheduling is, I think it makes sense to quickly reflect what actually scheduling is and what in contrast to this planning is, because oftentimes I hear people talk about visual planning, I hear people talk about planning and scheduling as if they were synonyms, but I think in terms of like manufacturing companies, and in also terms of like planning of execution, scheduling of execution, this is not the same. And my understanding is, and this is also like how many systems and how many software solutions are built, they make this clear differentiation. And that means that planning focuses like on the midterm horizons, on what to make and very roughly when to make it. So it brings together the general sales plan or the demand forecast with the capabilities to make item. Typically, planning works in buckets of time. So you make a plan for a month or for a few weeks or even for a quarter. And this is very rough cut. You only say, okay, I need to make these pieces next week, or I make those pieces and those units and those SKUs in next month. Or for the 3rd quarter, I'm expecting that we need to make X amount of item A, Z amount of item B, and so on and so forth. And oftentimes planning works with the assumption of infinite capacity, because it just want to give you an understanding of if you have the capability to make it and not that break this down to days or even hours or minutes, but it just like is the big picture. And this is also, by the way, how Business Central works. Business Central has to support you with planning, the planning worksheet and MRP, which exactly follows this idea and serves this need. And then once you have this plan in place, then scheduling starts. So scheduling delivers the exact definition as to when and by whom or on which machine to make the stuff that you forecast here or that is already demanded by your customers and comes from predicted or already taken orders. So scheduling boils down the rough plan that you have into concrete production order and resource sequence. So it makes the plan actionable. It works with much more concrete restrictions than planning, and oftentimes it also works, it plans with finite capacities, and it is much more short term. So it really tries to make the general plan actionable. And Business Central actually has a gap when it comes to scheduling. It is pretty good when it comes to planning. It has the planning worksheet, it has MRP, it has MPS, so it has all the tools to help you with this rough cut midterm planning, but it lacks tools to help you to define the exact when and by whom to make it. And this is the gap that we are closing with our visual scheduling extensions. And we have two of them, one a pure visual scheduling extension and one a visual advanced production scheduling extension. And as we do visual scheduling, it actually also, now that we know what we mean with scheduling, it means taking the plan that MRP, for example, has produced and making it actionable by defining the exact when and by whom to make it. Um, as we now know what we mean with scheduling, it also kind of makes sense to look at what actually is visual scheduling versus what could be the opposite of this, well, non-visual scheduling. So first of all, and this is obvious, visual scheduling is a visualization technique. So when you think of visual scheduling without having heard about our products, you most likely think about something like this. So a Gantt chart or a resource Gantt chart, or like call it what you want, a visual schedule with a timeline on the top, your resources on the left hand side, and then these boxes that show you which resource is working on which production order or which operation from which production order at which point of time. So visual scheduling is a visualization technique that helps you to make your schedule visual. But in my point of view and in our point of view, this is only one side of the medal. And and the more important side of the medal is not the part of where you make your schedule visual, but visual scheduling also is the process of doing scheduling in a visual way. So change the timing of operations, decide that this operation should happen here, change the production or the sequence. So say that you don't want to have this first and then that operation, but that operation before that operation. Change priority, say this work order is more important than the other, or change resource assignment and say that this operation should go into this block here. So this is what we call visual scheduling. It's the process of doing scheduling in a visual way with having some visualization techniques to help you do this. And what is really important from our point of view is that the user controls the schedule. So if you run a graphical planning board like this, if you run a visual scheduling product, we want you to understand what is happening and we want you to feel in control and in charge of what is happening. So we know that there are solutions out there, and some of those solutions are really marvelous. They are very cool from a mathematical standpoint. But we still feel that they are not really visual scheduling. So there is a magic algorithm that takes place. Then users look at the results in a visual representation, and then they don't like it, and then they trigger the algorithm again to build a new plan. this is not what we feel, what is, and what we have like observed what is visual scheduling. And also we think that this is not helpful to many customers, especially in, let's say, the typical business central customer environment, where we don't have a lot of serial production companies, but where we have a lot of high mix, low volume manufacturing companies, where we have a lot of make to order manufacturers, where we have a lot of like hybrid make to order and serial production companies, in terms of that you produce some components on stock and then assemble or configure them to the final product. And in these cases where we see that the most of your customers or most of the companies working with Business Central are in this environment, we typically have very volatile routings, we have very volatile demand, we have we have less predictability, and in these cases, a magic algorithm oftentimes does not work, because users do not and cannot trust the results, because you're never sure if the algorithm still mirrors and matches your reality. So in these cases where you have high volatility, where you have a lot of needs to interfere with the schedule, it is really important that the user controls the schedule, and that the user can schedule and do the process of scheduling, making scheduling changes in a visual way and not just by pushing a button. So with this and with having this definition clear, we can say visual scheduling is the process of visually scheduling with the help of dedicated scheduling tools and algorithms that are clear to the user. So I'm not against, and we are not against, algorithmic scheduling, but we prefer to have this happen in a way that you as user can understand, and that you a user are really can trust the results, because you know what is happening and you can trigger different algorithms at different point of times to meet different scheduling goals. And with this definition, we can actually do now the comparison, what is visual production scheduling and what is visual advanced production scheduling. And let me start with visual production scheduling first. And I will compare visual production scheduling and visual advanced production scheduling with a couple and a really very few characteristics. And let's start with visual production scheduling. So in terms of when we talk about visual production scheduling and we think of the underlying business or scheduling logic, and we put this into perspective of Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central and also Dynamics Nav, in our point of view, a visual production scheduling exactly mirrors the standard Business Central logic, the standard Business Central business and scheduling logic. So the data model of visual production scheduling is exactly the standard Business Central data model. So no enhancements to this, no changes to this. We have production orders, we have production order lines, we have production order routing lines, we have capacity needs, we have machine centers, we have work centers, we have capacities, we have the shop calendars, all of this, all standard, all very down to earth, no changes to it. And when you do the visual scheduling, when you do the drag and drop scheduling, then this triggers the business central scheduling logic. So if you change an operation, then the visual scheduler asks business central, hey, I want to position this operation here. Tell me the end result of this. And there is no automatic scheduling involved. It is just visual, aka manual. So you see the visual schedule, and then you can make changes to this. And also, we don't work against any scheduling restrictions. The only scheduling restriction that you can work with is this predecessor successor relation, and you only have this one scheduled simulation that you work on. So this is the open planning board, and this is, and it's have these are the core assumptions, and for us the core principles of visual production scheduling. And when it comes to Business Central, then this translates into our product called the Visual Production Scheduler. And this is the product that we are going to look at now. And then we will kind of come back to PowerPoint. We will compare these visual production scheduling that we just talked about and that I will show you in a minute with what should visual advanced production scheduling do differently. And then we will look at the product called VAPS, which will kind of meet the ideas that I will present here shortly. But first of all, let's have a look at how visual production scheduling can look like. And with this, let me change gears and let's go to my Business Central. Let me quickly refresh and log in again. And let's go to the VPS. So the VPS is what we call the Visual Production Scheduler, and the Visual Production Scheduler is a product that exactly follows the ideas that I just had. So you already have a production plan in place that either comes from MRP or that comes because you created production orders from your sales orders, or it exists because you created production orders manually. And the VPS, as a visualization technique, visualizes all your scheduling data that you have, and it allows you to make drag and drop changes to this based on the business and on the standard Business Central business logic and based on the standard Business Central business model. So let's call the VPS, the Visual Production Scheduler. And by the way, we did not announce it because it's really fresh, but we just released a new version of the VPS, which is available on AppSource and which is available on our partner source, on our partner portal. We just released it, I think, yesterday or the day before yesterday, and we're currently preparing all the communication around this. So when I open the Visual Production Scheduler, it opens now in what I call the production order view, and it shows me my planned production orders, my firm planned production orders, and all my released production orders. It has a timeline here, and it has the vertical line. The vertical line is the work date. So in my artificial demo environment, the work date here is the 28th of January. And you see I'm looking basically a week back and a week in the future. And you also see that you can change the resolution of the time scale with the mouse wheel. So I see that there's a question. Do these work on Business Central with Business Central 14 with CU 18? Yes. All our products work with all Business Central versions starting from version 14. I think the VAPS requires Business Central 14.4 because we're making use of some events that Microsoft introduced with Business Central 14.4. And both on all our products are available both for on-prem installations and for cloud installation. So they are like always approved by Microsoft and always available on AppSource. However, going forward, we may follow and we will follow Microsoft's release policy that new features will also be built into the most recent versions, because now we have version 14, version 15, version 16, 17, 18, and 19, and they'll all vary from each other. So we also really recommend that you constantly update your system or update your customers, because like going forward, new features will be done always for the latest version only. Bug fixes, of course, for everything that is supported by Microsoft. Hope that this answered the question. So now back to the VPS. We are in the production order view where we see all those production orders. When you see the triangle, this is one production order. The production order is 101232. And if I double click here, the respective production order card open. So they see this is an item production order for item 5001 with a due date on the 25th of February, and there's only one production order line. So with the same due date, production order with the due date on the 25th of February. So if I expand this production order, then I see exactly this production order line with the respective due date. And then, as you know, from the production order line, you can drill down into the routing lines, and then you see I have 6 routing steps. It all runs through machine centers, and I need to do some drilling, some milling, some churning, some welding, assembly and quality control, and also with some setup times and some run times. So I can actually drill down from here into the routing lines and see all those routing lines, and I can select one of those operations, and then you see the dependencies, and I can also tell the VPS actually I can tell this in the other view. I will show you in a minute that we can also look at the setup times. So this is the production order view, and I can look at all those production orders. As said, they are by status, and right now they are sorted by the production order number. New feature just introduced this week is that I can sort the order, and instead of sorting it by the production order number, I can, for example, sort this by the due date to see, and I'm sorting it by production order due date ascending, so that now I get always the production order which is due next on the very top, and this is true for the planned one, the firm planned one, and the released ones over here. In addition to this view, we have another view, and I can say this show the operation, the capacity view. So then I can switch the view, and now I see this operation in the capacity view, and you see I need to drill it, I need to mill it, turn it, weld it, assemble it. And here we have the same data, but now we look at it not by the production orders, but by work center group, by the work center which is drilling, then the machine centers, then and then the machine centers, and you can see I can expand this so that I can pretty quickly see which machine center is kind of scheduled with which workload when. And we also see here that with this particular production order, actually, and now you see this gray beginning here, the gray beginning at the bar. This is the setup time as we have in the routing. What we can also do here is we can see a capacity utilization, and I'm actually seeing that I'm overloading my drilling one machine here with this production order because we have an overlap here. So as said, the visual production scheduler is a tool that does not come with its own business, with its own scheduling logic. And so I have configured my Business Central in a way that I don't use what is called the capacity constraint resources, because this is a functionality that I have found that actually nobody really trusts. And this means that Business Central, when it does the planning, it works with the assumption of infinite capacity, so something like this can happen. So what we do have here is we have a machine center. Let me double click on this machine center. We have a machine center with a capacity of 1, and now I allocated 2 production order, 2 operations at the same point of time to it, which is something that Business Central does not prevent me of doing. So now what we get in the visual production schedule, what we get now here is with this capacity load chart, I see actually that here and here later that day, the other day, I have a resource conflict. So now what I can do in terms of visual scheduling, I can, and I see that there's a question. Let me finish this thought, or maybe let me go here. It was just a confirmation that the first question was answered. So now let me, but what I can do is what I said, I can change the timing of operations. So now from here, I can take this and say, okay, the next available free slot on this drilling machine is here on that Friday, the 19th. And by the way, the gray and white areas in the background, they represent work and non-work time. So I can see, move this and squeeze this in here. getting more resource overloads here on that Monday, because you see when I move this over the bar, this thing got longer because now I have the weekend in between. So when I said when we drag and drop stuff, we always call the business-centered scheduling logic. So we moved it here, and then it asks, okay, if I start here, when will I finish? And business-centered recognized, okay, there is non-work time as per the shop calendar, so it will finish here. Instead of this, what I can also do is I can say, hey, I can actually change the resource assignment and move it down here to drilling 2, because drilling 2 has some free time here. Okay, so that what I can do here with the visual production scheduler is change the timing, move it left and right, and also change the resource assignment, move it up and down. So let me do it again here. And we see two things. I move it here, and you see it now gets a red dot, because now this is the due date line. Remember, let's go to the production order again. The due date is the 25th of February, 25th of February, and now, and I said the only restriction we take into place is we take into account is the predecessor successor relation. So when I move this, I'm also automatically moved all the predecessors, and um, the assembly and the quality control happen or finish after the due date. So now it gets this red bubble and tells me, hey, if you do this, this is late. If I move it here, you see all these things are moved closer to it. You see I'm causing a conflict here on the milling 1, but of course this could, for example, go to milling 2, and here I could use the combined milling and turning machine if possible, and do things like this. And the red dot is gone because I'm now finishing in time. But what we have still is the gray dot here, and this tells me I changed stuff in my visual schedule, but not yet in Business Central. And this refers to what I showed you in the table, that we only have, or we just have, one production simulation. So as long as you are in the visual production scheduling, and as long as you're dragging and dropping stuff here, we do not change Business Central. So remember, this operation comes from drilling 1, and it initially was supposed to start, I think it was here on the 17th. So now if I look at this production order, and let me double click on it and open the production order card and drill down to routing. So now let's assume a colleague of me would look at this production order from Business Central, then the first operation is still on drilling 1 with a starting date on the 17th of February. So this gray dot tells me that I changed the production order here in the visual production scheduling, but not yet saved it back to Business Central. So if I'm happy with the change, if I think that this is a good schedule, this is a good production order and resource sequence that I now manually build, then I can go and save this. And now we're doing a couple of plausibility checks in the background, and I get the confirmation the schedule has been saved successfully. And now the gray dot is gone, because now the visual schedule represents Business Central data, which means upon save, we updated the production order in Business Central. And if we look at it again, let me double click again and drill down here, you see it has been moved to the drilling number 2, and the start date has been updated, and also all the other things that I changed. So now it's also on milling 2, it's on the combined milling and turning machine. Everything that I changed was now, or has now been updated by making this visual change here. So with the visual production scheduler, you get an instrument that shows you your production schedule as it is in Business Central. The visual production schedule, the VPS, the visual production scheduler, requires just the standard manufacturing module of Business Central. It requires, very obviously, it requires production orders, right? With production order lines, with routing. So if there is no routing, we have no information of the who is going to produce on it and when. So it requires production orders, production order lines and routings. It requires work centers, and it also can work with machine centers. So if you only have it on work centers, that's also okay. For the VPS, it shows you the schedule you have, both from the view of your machine centers and work centers, or from your machine center group, or the work center groups, the work centers and the machine centers, and from the view of your production order, so that you can look at this production order by production order based on the status. And it shows you also on one view where you have capacity issues, so where you are overloading your capacity, but also like here you see actually maybe I have one welding workplace too much because a lot of my welding capacity isn't used in this point of time. But however, as most of you or your customers most likely are make to order manufacturers, then this is with volatile routings and dynamic demand changes, this is nothing to worry about, because this can change going into next month where we would need much more welding and, for example, much less milling. So this is quite typical what we see from many of our customers, that they are not always fully utilizing all the machines, but it is more important kind of to get things done in time rather than to utilize all machines at all point of time. Everything that you do in the visual production scheduler is manual, right? And you get the tools, the visual tools, to help you change the timing or the assignment to the resources. And there are a couple of more things that you can do. You see, we can search for production order. Let me just search for a production order, and we search for production order, whatever, 10176. And if I do so, I see the production order. And if I say okay, then it all automatically goes there. It highlights it and it has it expanded. And then I can look at it from here, or again, show the operation capacity view. And then I see the machine centers, and I see the work centers, and I see how it runs through my shop. I have these capacity utilization chart both on work center level and on machine center level. And right now they are aggregated by the second. But if I would like to know, okay, how is my utilization on average in these weeks, then I can change it, and I see, okay, in this week I have a slight overload, I have a total, and here I still have some capacity left. So this is something that you can quickly change. So there are a lot of visual tools that help you make your scheduling decisions quickly and easily, that you understand what is going on. But on the other hand, there is no automation that helps you. And this automation actually comes with what we call the Visual Advanced Production Scheduler. So let's get quickly back to PowerPoint to set the scene for the second part of the demo. So when we understand with Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, then the first difference is when it comes to the business or the scheduling logic. So with Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, we no longer exactly mirror the standard business central business logic. We try to do as good as we can. However, when it comes to the process of scheduling, when it comes to the process of changing the time or changing the resource assignments, then we have an own scheduling algorithm that helps you or your customers to properly schedule with finite capacity. Because scheduling with finite capacity is a functionality that is missing in Business Central. And yes, I know that there are the capacity constraint resources, which you can get a result that looks as if it is planned with finite capacity, but I really recommend you to switch this function on, and then you look at the data with the visual production scheduler, and then you will understand how Business Central does it, and you will not trust the results. So this is our experience, that 80, 98% of our customers don't trust these results. So with the VAPS, we actually built a scheduling algorithm that allows to schedule with finite capacity. And this algorithm is different than what is in standard Business Central. With a Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, we also do not 100% rely on the standard Business Central data model. Of course, we rely on it as good as we can, and we embrace it as good as we can, and we don't want to make as less changes to it as we can. However, where it is needed for achieving some advanced scheduling, we also enhance the standard data model. And one example is with the VAPS, we allow you to schedule with alternative machine centers, which means that you can actually say, okay, within this routing, this is not only this one machine where it should go to, but I have these 5 machines that are allowed, and the one machine is faster, the other is slower. So you can build this kind of model, and then you can say, okay, following this model, I want to automatically schedule. And I come to this in a minute. When we now do drag and drop scheduling in a Visual Advanced Production Scheduler, of course, we do not trigger the standard Business Central scheduling layer, but we trigger the logic of the specific finite capacity scheduler that comes as part of the product. And with having a dedicated scheduler that is part of the product, so a dedicated finite capacity scheduler, we also can facilitate automatic scheduling. And here I come again to the differentiation of visual scheduling versus non-visual scheduling. What we do, and what we think is the best way to achieve visual advanced production scheduling is not to have this magic button that does everything, and then you most likely do not understand what is going on because there's very sophisticated mathematics taking place. But we believe in giving you dedicated scheduling tools to accomplish certain scheduling goals. So we want to give you one button that helps you to efficiently schedule all new production orders. We want to give you another button that helps you to accelerate the boss order. We want to give you another button that helps you to reduce the idle times on certain machine centers, and so on and so forth. So we have dedicated actions that you can kick in to achieve dedicated goals. And with having a finite capacity scheduler in place, we can also look and implement additional scheduling restrictions other than predecessor-successor relations, as we saw in the VPS. Of course, we take this into account. However, now we also schedule with finite capacity, and the finite capacity that we schedule with right now on machine center level is a finite capacity of 1. We will change this going forward, maybe beginning of next year, so that we can also schedule with finite capacity that is larger than 1. But for the time being, we automatically assume that you have a finite capacity of 1. We can implement a restriction that says EMAT, earliest material availability date. So only schedule production orders when material is available, and we can pin operation that we can say, okay, this is what I scheduled it and don't touch it anymore. And when it comes to scheduling simulations, we just had one with visual production scheduling, with visual advanced production scheduling. We allow you to have as many simulations as you like. And with this, let's go back to Business Central and let's move from the VPS to the VAPS. And the VAPS, other than the VPS, has a couple of options here. 4 of them are to set this up. Maybe we quickly look at the VAPS setup. And you see that, for example, we say we consider the EMAT, so the earliest material availability when adding all, which means when we schedule all production orders. And we consider it also when we fill idle times on machine centers and so on and so forth. There is some enhanced integration with MRP, so you can do a lot of setup stuff here. Then we have the simulations, which means you actually can build multiple scenarios of your schedule. And this whole area here, this whole simulation area, it follows a workflow. So first of all, we should do the EMAT allocation. The EMAT allocation means we need to calculate the earliest material availability date. So the date when the material for my production orders is available at earliest. And so we can actually access this area and say calculate allocations. And with this, and this went pretty fast. With this, let me clear the allocations and do this again. So with this, we actually now look at production order component need and production order component supply day by day by day, and then we allocate production order supply to production order component demand, and with this we determine the earliest material availability of each production order component on production order line level, and then we aggregate this to the production order line level, and then we see what the earliest material availability date is. Then this is the first step. The second step is to create a new simulation. So I say I want to create a simulation where I look 1 week back, 3 months in the future. I only want to include the firm planned production orders and the released production orders, and because I was now doing the material availability allocation, I want to look at my production orders by availability view. By the way, there is some new functionality here, which because the VAPS was also released earlier this week, which I will not detail out now, but with the base view filter, you can also say, hey, I only want to filter on a certain subset of machine centers or work centers, and I will never see the others, but still they should get scheduled. So there is quite powerful new functionality in here, which I will most likely show you in a webinar second week of November, where we run through all news of VPS, VAPS, and then VJS. But not today, but just also for your information, new version of the VAPS just released this week, already available on AppSource. So if I create this simulation, we actually copy all production orders that were part of this filter criteria into what we call the simulation table, so that we now can build a schedule based on this copy data. So that when we schedule, we never touch live production order data, only when we publish it. So the process is calculate earliest material allocations, create the simulation, then view the simulation. And now I view the simulation, and remember, I applied a color scheme that says availability, and this color scheme just knows two colors, one color to show me that my production orders have material availability, and one production order has the material not available. Before we look at this, just one thing in terms of the visualization. This looks exactly like the view in the VPS, where we had the work center groups, the work centers, and the machine centers. The only thing that is different is this yellow line, which is what we call the standby resource, which we automatically add to every work center. We treat the standby resource as a resource with infinite capacity, and the standby resource contains all those production orders that have been added to Business Central, either manually or from a sales order or from MRP, that have not yet been scheduled by the VAPS. So everything that you see on my milling machines, on my drilling machines, on my welding workplaces, all of these production orders have been scheduled by me before, and let me quickly escape this, have been published. So process is calculate material allocation, create the simulation, view it, update it if you get new Business Central data, and publish it. And if you publish it, then the schedule is put into place, and then every production order gets a flag scheduled by VAPS. And let me do it differently so that I have a little bit more real estate on the screen. Publish, and if you publish it, then every production order gets a flag scheduled by VAPS, and then next time you run a simulation, it shows up on the resources where there's everything that you didn't schedule with the VAPS so far, because it has either been changed within Business Central or has been added to Business Central, shows up on the standby resource. So first of all, let us look at this red thing where we don't have material availability. And this is something you saw I did the check. Consider earliest material availability when adding all. This means when I schedule new production orders, we always take this into account. However, when I make drag and drop changes, drag and drop is very powerful, because with drag and drop, I can do whatever, more or less, I can do whatever I want to do. So I can violate also restrictions. And I made drag and drop changes before, where I positioned this before the earliest material availability date, because I, as the planner, know that we only need material from a supplier who is next door, and maybe I can send somebody to get there and just get the material from there, just for example. So, but if we look why this is red, let's have a look at the production order itself. So it is scheduled to start on the 1st of February, and this is item 5004. So it is scheduled to start on the 1st of February. And if we look at the component lines, we only need 2 components, and we both need them on the 1st of February. And we see that this material was allocated on the 29th, but this material only is available at the 4th of February, so after that date. So the earliest material availability date for that production order line is the 4th of February. So if we look, actually, if we quickly look at that item, then we will see that from this item we have nothing on stock. We have nothing on stock, but we expect 2005 from purchase orders. And if we look at those purchase orders, it is only one purchase order. And if I would drill down there, we would see that from this purchase order, we expect the material to arrive on the 4th of February. So the 4th of February is the earliest material availability date. So if I start dragging and dropping this, if I start, for example, to make time changes, you see that left of the 4th of February, my screen is grayed out, and right of it, it is light. So if I position it here, if I position it once the material is available, it changes to green. So now that I scheduled everything when the material is available, I can actually look at scheduling the other production orders, and by this I change it by production orders, so that I get a different color scheme. We have different color schemes within the VAPS. And now you see, for example, this one, this is on the standby resource. It is shown in red, and I have to get it to the schedule like as early as possible, because this is actually the time when it is requested from Business Central. And of course, I can drag and drop this. So I can drag this to the sewing machine, and then here I have to make a call and say, okay, if this is urgent to me, I can squeeze it in here between the purple and the blue. But if I have this, if I do this, then as we are scheduling with finite capacities, all of this here is pushed out, and also all the successors of these things on the other machines are pushed out. So if I do an upstream change, this can have a lot of downstream changes. And if I scroll down, maybe no, nothing turned late by this change, because I don't see any red dot here. So it didn't do much harm to my schedule, but again, an upstream change with a lot of downstream changes. So let me undo this and get this back again. So as I said, with the VAPS, we actually enhance the data model. So that you can define alternative work and machine centers. So if we very closely look at the routing, you see that actually the routing itself, it is enhanced by a new column. This is the alternate routing set. And you see, okay, for sawing, I don't have an alternative because I just have one saw. But in drilling, I can actually use drilling 1 and drilling 2, and both machines are equal. They have the same time to set up and they have the same time to process. So I can also tell the VAPS actually, okay, I want to schedule it, add it to the schedule, and making use of my alternative routing. So please, within all allowed alternatives, find the place where I can get this production order finished as soon as possible. So if I say apply alternative routing, we now do an automatic scheduling. We add this production order to the schedule, looking within all allowed alternatives for those routing step or for those machine that has the earliest available capacity. And you see we are finishing here on the 10th of February. So now if this is a boss order, I want to say, okay, but this is still too late. I want to get this done as soon as possible. Then we have another scheduling instrument where you can say, okay, now I want to accelerate the boss order. I want to say, okay, from here, I want to push it through my shop as fast as can with no delay between sawing and drilling, no delay between drilling and assembly. Make it from here as fast as possible. So I can say scheduled successors, and then we push it through the shop as fast as we can. Let's see if I got it. Yeah, now you see, but now again, I made this change. I push it through, and then all those others got pushed out. So this created a lot of changes, and you see also a lot of things turn red here because my acceleration of this boss order turned all those things late here. So now I need to talk to my boss and say, okay, we can push this through. We can tell the customer, hey, we are ready on the 3rd of February or on the 4th of February. But we also know that all these things run late. So maybe we better don't do this, because typically we don't get a premium from our customers if we deliver that early. And then we need to talk to the customer if this date still is okay, because with this we make overall better use of our resources. And then you see there are a lot of more production orders waiting here, and they all come from sales orders. And what I can do now here is I can actually add those production orders to the schedule in one go. So there is another button that tells me now I want to schedule all those production orders to, I want to add them to my schedule without changing the existing schedule. And I want to make use of my alternative machines as good as I can. So I can say schedule all, and then everything is added to the schedule. I can define the number of iterations that I do this. We have some prioritization mechanism in the past that make sure that we add them to the schedule in a way that we try to avoid late productions, and now they have been added to the schedule. And when I want to look at those, and told you that they mostly come from sales orders, I can also say, okay, now show me this production order in the sales order view. And then you see, okay, this production order actually comes from the sales order 1018. The sales order 1018 includes item number 5000. I need 50 units. And here it is when it is scheduled. I need this sales order includes this item and this item that I selected. And I see the entire routing. So now I can, when I talk to this customer, I can tell them when all his items will be ready. And if he asks me if I can for example, accelerate this, then I can look it up from here again, show in capacity view, and then same principles like in the VPS. I can try to see if I can accelerate this. And of course, I can accelerate with the scheduled successors, and then we can bring this forward and say, okay, this is how we can accelerate, but we can also see the impact on all the other production orders, because here we always schedule with a finite capacity. And with this, I think I gave you an overview about the visual production scheduler versus the visual advanced production scheduler, what both products can do and what both products, like what the other product can do more than the other. And oftentimes when I show both products to customers or partners, then we have the question, okay, now what should we do? Where should we start with? And which product is the right product for which type of customers? And of course, there is no silver bullet answer to these type of questions. Um, but I would phrase it in that way. If you haven't worked with any scheduling software so far, so if you used to schedule on a whiteboard, on a corkboard, or with Excel or in any other manual system, then I highly recommend that you first implement Business Central Manufacturing and then start with the VPS, because the VPS will help you make your scheduling digital. And then once you're familiar with this, once you're familiar with the principles, then you can move to the VAPS and apply the more sophisticated solution. And the pricing is, if you invest into the VPS and then go to the VAPS, you only have to pay like the increment price from VAPS to VPS. So and if you're on subscription, then initially you pay the VPS subscription, and then when you switch to VAPS, you pay the VAPS subscription. So you will not lose money if you go small. So if you go Visual Production Scheduler first and then Visual Advanced Production Scheduler afterwards, the both products are built in a way that you can start with the one and then continue with the other, and you won't lose any money if you do so. If you have, however, worked with the scheduling system before, and if you have kind of a lot of product owners that need to handle, you might want to start with the VAPS directly, because it just gives you more scheduling horsepower and more scheduling automation. But this is something that you need to decide on your own. This is like based on where you are. And so, like, one of the closing recommendations is I recommend that you learn to walk before you run. So don't try to run the marathon or to do the complex thing with the VAPS if you don't have like digital scheduling experience. If you come from a manual solution, start with the VPS, get your business central data clean and clear, understand scheduling, understand visual scheduling, walk, and then run with a complex solution. However, I also recommend not to take ages for this decision, where to start, how to start, when to start, because the longer the wait, the more you spend with your current, most likely inefficient systems. So oftentimes I also see customers who kind of take really, really long to make this decision. I just had the case that I had a customer to whom I presented 18 months ago the VPS, the simple product, and said, oh, we need to decide and maybe we need to make the big step. And now 18 months later, they come back and say, oh, you know what? We are still kind of getting lost in our Excel sheets, and we want to see the VPS again, and maybe we start from there. So now they lost 18 months with their Excel sheets, and while using Excel sheet, and this is what they confirmed to me, they lost customers, they missed deadlines, they inefficiently use their machines, so they have a lot of operational issues. And they have these operational issues because they always were dreaming to make this one big step. And this is the last recommendation that I have. Like, success is not the big step that you will make in the future. Success always is a small step that you take now. And I think with the products that we have, we give you the capability to learn to walk before you run, and we also give you the capability to make a small step now instead of waiting like for the big step into the future. And with this, I'm opening up this to question, and I see that there is already one. Oh no, that was just somebody thanking me. Always welcome. So if you have a question, then please let me know. And there's another thank you that was great. So thanks for the feedback. Always happy if the content that we produce is useful for you guys. If you don't have a question now, then maybe you have it later. Then send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm really happy to engage with you. And if you are at Directions EMEA in Milan next week, just come by, say hello. I will be going there, and I'm really excited to see this awesome Business Central and Dynamics nav community again. And if there is a chance to have a chat, to have a coffee, or even better, have a beer, then you can count on me. I will be there, and I'm open to chat, snacks, coffees, and beers as well. There's another question. Can you create permissions to VPS? And not now. This is something that we consider doing next year, but right now, um, what we don't have. However, but this is something we would need to discuss in a separate session. We started um, to actually create an API for both the VAPS and VPS, and maybe we can use this API to kind of make some type of permissions to, for example, to prevent the one user making changes to a certain type of production orders or something. So I'm not 100% sure what you refer to with permissions. But if you want to have a deeper discussion on this, then please send me a quick email, and then we can discuss it also with our technical team, see what your requirement is and how we can best help there. Next question, is it possible to see if a component is laid for a finished part? I mean, for a part which is produced internally as for injection molding. Yes, this should be also possible, but also here, I would say we should look at this and kind of rebuild your data in our environment, and then check if the product works as expected. I would say yes. If you produce the part internally, then we will also have the finish date of the internal production as the earliest material availability date for the following production steps. So I hope that this answered your questions. I don't see any more questions right now. So again, thanks for your attention. Stay safe and healthy, and see you next week at Directions if you are there. Bye bye. Take care. Have a great day.